What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Don't Give Up the Ship podcast. This is episode 64, and I'm recording with familiar face, whatever. It's EODC from the first Fire in the Hole. So you probably recognize the title. This is just Rev 2. Getting back on with EODC, talking about a bunch of different stuff, a lot of leadership development focused chief season stuff this time around. First time, if you're interested, we did a bunch of... he went through like the EOD community, like as from like cradle to grave, as far as like joining and wanting to be an EOD tech, and then the whole training pipeline and all the things that those guys do leading up to, and the qualifications and the career progression and et cetera. So if that's what you're looking for, go back to the first Fire in the Hole episode and check that out. But this time around, much more leadership focus. It's always fun to talk to Nick, and enjoy. Well, welcome back, man. I gotta delete that, but yeah, no, welcome back, man. I'm pumped. Like we did a second one, kind of. You were on one of the Goats After Dark.
Yes,
but yeah, no, it's been a hot minute. We've been like exchanging messages, but
yeah,
I'm psyched to talk to you.
Episode 39 was the first time.
Go check it out, kids. I said something. I did the intro outro before we even started, and I couldn't remember the episode number, so it's good that you did. There you go, being prepared again.
We're here to talk about what I dismounted on my first time on, which was talking about initiation and talking about some of the ways we could make it better, some of the ways that are just deficiencies, but maybe we don't have an answer to fix it yet. So we're just going to kind of point at it and say, hey, this sucks. Maybe we need to change this. I can't come up with every answer to solve every ill in the Navy, but I can at least address some of the problems that I've seen.
Yeah, and I mentioned the Zoom call that I was on, and I won't get into the details of like what it was about exactly, but we were discussing some of this stuff, and it came up that it was kind of like, as we were discussing, we were working through and brainstorming like a focus for the project that we're working on, like the exact direction and like thesis statement or whatever you want, whatever you want to call it, like to start with and then go forward, creating an outline and everything else. And it felt like it felt like everybody wanted like facts to support like the arguments and all. And it's like, I feel like there's a lot of value in just having the conversation, like the waxing philosophical and just going back and forth about like how I feel about a thing and then working the stuff out as you go is like, there's a lot of value in doing the research as well. Like I'm a big preparer and researcher when I'm approaching a topic or a point. Like I want to read all the source documents and I want to highlight things and take notes and digest all that data. But there's a ton of value in just having the conversation, right? Like, and like you said, like we're going to point at a thing and say, you know, hey, we could probably do this better. Does that mean I know what better is yet? No, not yet. I'm working on it. But like having the conversation, a lot of times I find myself like stumbling upon or fleshing out like a solution or at least the beginnings of, or a direction to head in because I'm having that conversation. So like, I think,
I could definitely be wrong on this. And I haven't spent a ton of time in the Navy, but I don't know of a rating that is like idea man, third class, or, you know, like where your job is literally to sit around and come up with ideas. I think it's just sort of a part of being allowed a little more freedom, and we can kind of look back and address what we're actually looking around and kind of self-assess. So the first piece was the tradition of change, CPO initiation, CPO 365. It was a research document that was in 2015 was directed by the MCPON to the Navy History and Heritage Command. Master Chief James Lucci, I don't know.
I believe it's Lucci, but don't quote me on that.
We'll go with Lucci. And it's a magnum opus. I mean, it's like we were saying earlier, I think it's about 109 pages. Granted, it's got a lot of pictures, but the pictures are good and they're important to be there because you could describe initiation until you see a photo of some of the jackassery that occurred. Or also how non-jack was early in the early days, in the really, really early days.
Right.
I think it's important to have those photos on one page, you know, left and right of each other, and to see the evolution of how we went through this rising action, climax, and then resolution of the process. So what I took away from that document was that initiation just kind of came out of thin air.
Pretty much.
And they're really, it was just from a perceived deficiency of new chief petty officers coming into the mess, and that the senior of the chiefs that were there were saying, hey, we need to have a semi-informal process here to welcome these new chiefs into the mess and to also teach them that their role is now changed.
Right.
Which I think every first-class petty officer that sees their name on the advancement message says, okay, yeah, I understand now that my role's changed. I don't think any first class that puts on khakis is saying, oh, I could just be the same exact person I was last week. Just like they weren't the same person when they put on third class, the same as second and first. And I don't know why we treat our first classes like they won't understand fully that they're advancing in rank and authority. But we have to now have this like dedicated 6-week process where we pull all these E6s and chiefs, senior chiefs, master chiefs out of their work centers, and the Navy comes to a reduced amount of efficiency. Somehow the Navy still continues to run without its senior leadership. So we should also take that on board as well.
Right. The good and the bad of it is like it's a really great thing and could be reflective of our leadership that somehow the wheels don't fall off the wagon while we're off doing what we're doing. And theoretically, in accordance with all the MCPON guidance that comes out every year, the mission comes first and these things should not be taken away from, et cetera. But a lot of times it inevitably does. As far as the tradition of change is one of the, like, I was telling you before we clicked record, like I print, shop, and spiralize and issue that to selectees and like, thou shalt read this and we will discuss it, because I think it's so important to understand where it all really came from. Because I grew up hearing all the stuff from Goat Locker about like the pretty flowery history of the charge book and like how, like it was this noble document that people carried around with them and compiled wisdom and blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, okay, well, why'd they call it a charge book? And then you read the tradition of change, and then you find out why it's really called the charge book. And I'll link all that in the description for the episode so people can find this document and read it. And I highly encourage everyone to check it out. There's a lot of incredible information in it. But
I think what would blow a lot of people away is that the goatlocker.org or com, I forget what it is.
I believe it's org. Yeah.
There's two sections of it. When I picked up Chief, I had to, part of my PQS was to register on Goat Locker and like introduce myself, because there's a chat room functionality of the site. And then the other side of the site is a bunch of reference material that is open to anybody, can go on there and like look at every last little piece of information that's on that website. So I'm going to like dispel the rumor number 1. There's secret stuff in the Chief season. There is like next to zero secret anything. Everything is open source. You can find it. It's searchable. It's cataloged. It's all aggregated on this website that anybody can get onto. The only other thing that you can't see is the chat side, because you have to get approved by the admins. And that's it.
Right.
They're just going to check to see if your name was on the message. If it is, then your account gets approved.
Yeah, and I always was told like, oh, they shut it down during the Chief season, and also I'm like, I've never seen it shut down.
It's never been shut down.
I was like, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's real. But
and then beyond that, the chat room function side of it is like full of the most, and this is my opinion, full of the most like right wing guys that they spew a lot of far right ideals. They don't allow room for any discourse, and then. It's just their like virtual VFW that they just get to sit and talk about. Oh, my kid just went off to college and this. And I've rarely seen anything of significance in the Navy being discussed on that board. It's for a bunch of retirees, and maybe it's just because that's what people are just using it for. But in my opinion, it's not what it was intended for. Yeah,
and it's a weird like cultural thing too, because again, like the project I was talking about, the Zoom call, blah, blah, blah. It's in the vein of us talking about the distrust between junior listed, boardroom, everyone basically, and chiefs. And we're talking about like the culture of the mess. Like, is there a Navy-wide mess culture? You know, like if there is, what is it? And is it good? And then is there like, what are the subcultures? How are they different across the different warfare communities and all that? And it's like, it's when you're just having like 4 people in a room trying to have that type of a conversation, you immediately start to see how difficult it is to have that type of a discourse. Cause it's like, there's a lot of chiefs will get defensive of the mess. It's because there's like an emotional attachment to it, and I'm a member of it. I'm a big fan of being a chief, right? It's like, it is what it is. I think you and I and some others are kind of like weird in that we're completely willing to and accepting of criticizing the mess as an organization because we want it to be better for the same reasons that other people fiercely defend it. It's like, you want to have that conversation. I want to be better. I want to be the best possible chief I can be. I want the mess to be the best possible version of it that it possibly can be, so that we can take care of sailors, because that's our only job.
Yeah, I think the big part that the Navy takes on to itself is we call this like the chief petty officer's mess. The Air Force has a similar situation where they have their first sergeants. So they wear a diamond in their rocker. They're the senior enlisted of their particular flight squadron, whatever, insert Air Force term here. Where like when I was in Kuwait, they had diamonds on the rock. Like they had their own club that you could only go to if you were invited or if you were a first sergeant, right? So similar to a chief's mess, you can only go in the chief's mess if you're a inducted chief petty officer or if you're invited, or we allow other services senior enlisted to go into the mess. Right. Like I've never seen one get kicked out. I've seen NCO clubs, and this is like international, right? That they just change the bar to which you're allowed to be entered into this club. Mm. But at the end of the day, you go in there and it's just a freaking bar, like it, or it's just a little clubhouse where people can sit and they can vent about the day's labors, or they can. It's like the one spot they could break down the barrier of not being able to discuss problems within the chain of command to their crew, because then they would be undermining the chain of command. Right. They need a space where it's not, there's probably a better way to say it, but you could complain openly and it not be perceived as you're just a whiner. Yeah. You can be human and like be vulnerable and be like flawed and just like say things that you're not supposed to, like, you know what I mean? Like, cause you're always in this position of being watched by the juniors and seniors and like being evaluated almost constantly. And it's like, I can just let my guard down. It's real. I mean, you have people that you ask any sailor that has a young child, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, you could talk to them all day long about good things. And then the minute you like stub your toe and you let an F word fly, that's the word that kid will like repeat, right? Because it's never the good stuff. Where did I hear that? Oh, Daddy said it, and you're like, oh, you narc. Thanks, man. But your junior sailors, they're not like a little kid, but they do pick up on the things. Like if you are constantly sitting there and you're bad mouthing your division officer, or you're bad mouthing the CO, you're not taking ownership of a decision that was made. Like, hey guys, we got to do this. Hey, it's not coming from me. This is coming from the skipper, and it's like, well, you just. Way to put it right all into the old man. Like that's good. That's good teamwork. But you do need a spot. I mean, we're all humans at the end of the day. Yeah. So you do need a spot where you can talk with like minds, people of equal station, and maybe get to an answer or at least an explanation in your head. Because I found it's a lot easier to explain to my guys what's going on when I know what's going on. Right. I don't just make it up. Yeah. And it's like, there's times where I need to like work it out too and like make it make sense. And to be able to have those conversations, I need somewhere to do it where I'm not in front of junior sailors. But that part of it, I have zero issues with. Yeah. The majority of the time it's the mess going, hey, CMC, this policy is screwed up. Like it affects 30% of my crew because no one ever thought about asking these guys about this duty watch rotation or this particular restriction now makes it so that this person can't use the child development center for their kid. And this is the only source of daycare they can afford. And then you can see like the wheels in the CMC's head being like, oh, damn it. Like, welfare of the crew. Like, I totally blew that one. Whoops. Okay, well, how do I fix this? But without that apparatus, you would never be able to communicate that.
Yeah, and when we have these conversations, that's the thing where I'm like, of course we need a place to close the door and do those things. Like, of course we do, and I have zero problems with that as a concept, and I don't think anybody else should either. Because a lot of times, and this is all being relayed to me secondhand. I'm not on surf ships, I don't know, but like a lot of times, formally or informally, there's a space where sailors can do that as well. Officers obviously have a space where they can do that as well. So it's not it's exclusive to chiefs.
The smoke deck. It's like the easiest. That's like the perfect analog for everyone that's wondering what the mess is for. Yeah. Think about all the complaining and venting the day's frustration off of yourself at the smoke pit. It's exactly what the chiefs are doing.
Right.
In the mess.
But it's important to make a distinction, and this is something a lot of times I forget to do because submarines, because it's like we say mess, and like a lot of times when you say that, it means like the separate dining area.
It doesn't need to be like a bullseyed compartment that there's a cipher lock on the outside. It could be literally anywhere.
Right.
It's just a term.
But to I think a larger population in the Navy, when they hear mess, it's like, yeah, we have like a lounge area or whatever where we go close the door and do certain things. But there's also like a mess where it's like they go eat and they have their own place to eat. And then
the actual etymology of the term, the mess, it's physically where they would provide messing services.
Yeah. But then you go further. So I'm saying like on a surface ship, they have like a mess, like a chief's mess where they go and do like what we just described. And then they have a mess where they go eat together exclusively with the door closed, separate from the E6 and below. And then you have your own berthing, and then you have your own parking. And then you have, so it's,
don't get me started on the parking.
Yeah, me either. It becomes this. It becomes this thing where it's like we're creating all this privilege for this exclusive class of leaders. That there's all these artificially created boundaries, and it's like boundaries that I don't think need to exist or should exist, because I don't think any of those types of things are merited or needed or whatever. Like I think it's a good parking spot, show up early. Like I don't.
Yeah, going to the topics of your Zoom meeting. Not to get into it, but the warfare communities do strip away or add what is required in their opinion to enforce those types of status type rewards. So like in the expeditionary community or the special warfare community, you don't get a separate berthing because you're a chief. You're sleeping with in the same tent or in the same compound. Maybe the camp that you're on will segregate based off of rank, but I've really rarely seen there be any type of division between that and the lower ranking people.
And I think that as a result,
on like an aircraft carrier, even the E6s had their own mess on the aircraft carrier.
Yeah. Yep.
So where everyone wants to immediately dog on the Chiefs, and don't get me wrong, it's a juicy target and it's very easy to complain about.
I get it. But
there is a strata of division amongst all ranks, and it's based deeply in the way the Navy organizes from its historical foundings.
Right. And
there is a actual hierarchical need to separate people on board naval vessels, and it's existed for as long as navies have existed.
Right. And I feel like I agree with what you're saying, that there is a need for that to a certain degree, but I think there's a functional need, and then there's this like extra stuff we've piled on top that is all this privilege crap that everybody has a problem with. I don't think if the only thing that existed was the necessary boundaries to maintain good order and discipline, I don't think you'd be hearing the same things. I don't think we would experience the same type of vitriol and lack of trust, but we're in a place where there's so much of that crap where it's like, because my boss right now, my immediate like officer supervisor is because I spend more time supervising him, God bless his heart, but He's got aircraft carrier experience. So he's a submariner supply officer, and then he was on an aircraft carrier because that's how supply officer career progression works. So he was telling me, he's like, as soon as that aircraft carrier would tie up wherever it went, off would come sailors with armfuls of these signs where they just take over a parking lot, and every single person that thinks they're important gets a parking spot. And now junior sailors have nowhere to park. And so I'm just like, it's not even like the base or like there's some kind of policy in place. It's like, no, they're just doing it because they feel entitled to this privilege. Yeah, that's the stuff that I'm like,
I've been
makes
to
me turn green, man. Yeah,
I've seen the overcrowded carrier parking lot, and then you look across the street. Obviously, the closer to the pier parking lot, that's completely almost next to empty, and it's you're like, damn, that looks really convenient. And then you roll in there, and it's all these old blue and gold signs. Now, granted, where I'm my function now as a chief, I'm like, pull in there, boys. Let's see if anyone gives us some freaking heat. I dare them. Yeah. I want to see this. I want to see, because it's never in my experience, it's never been a chief that ran out there. It's always some person that they've shanghaied into enforcing this imaginary parking lot that doesn't exist in reality. It's just something like you said, the locust swarm of signs that does an ad hoc reservation of this parking lot, and it's completely artificial, does not need to happen. And I agree with you. If you want a great parking space, show up early.
Yeah.
Or the fact that the duty rotation will swap, and then there will be spaces available for you.
Yeah. And somehow like the entire submarine force like doesn't have reserve parking for anybody except for the triad, and like the world keeps spinning and nothing.
Yeah. And I would make the statement, and you back me up or tell me I'm wrong, the submarine service has more pride than the surface Navy does, and has more unity and cohesion across all ranks of the force than the surface fleet does.
100%. But then I'd go further to say that like we probably lag behind communities like yours and Naval Special Warfare, because
I don't know,
you guys have probably stripped a lot more of that away, and I don't know. But
we had an interesting question proposed at a leadership course that I went to in our community's leadership, EOD leadership continuum. And they had the admiral on, and he asked us over the phone, do you identify yourselves as chiefs or as EOD technicians? And we're all like, no, EOD technicians. Yeah. And then he went a step further. He said, okay, do you view yourself as an EOD technician or as a sailor? And his whole crux of this argument was he wants to bring the NECC together. So he doesn't want to have these kind of different levels within his community. He wants the entire warfare community. Like if his example was, if I saw some Seabees getting beaten up in a bar, would we jump in to help them, or would we say, those are Seabees, they're not EOD techs? I'm pretty sure, given the situation, they're a sailor. It could have been Army guys, and we probably would have hopped in there. It wouldn't have mattered.
Right. Right.
But in the admiral's eyes, he wanted to have an idea of where we are, what's the pulse of the force. Yeah. And I mean, I have a lot of rating pride because it's the job that I wanted to do. I think a lot of it has more to do. I mean, the rating badge could be literally anything. I have more in my warfare pin and in the people I work with. Those are the things I'm like the most into. Yeah,
I would say, it's an interesting question, but because it's like, I feel like because you're being forced just by virtue of the question structure to pick one thing.
Of course. And it's kind of what he's getting at. It's a forced point.
Right. And I understand. Yeah, I understand that piece. And that's why he was asking it that way. But I also look at it like, I feel like it's more nuanced than me. Like, do I identify more? I don't know, man. Like, I feel like I've always approached it as a sailor first because I have to, because I think to be a good chief, I have to look at it like sailors first. Like and I mean that in every way that you could interpret it, but it's like surface sailor, like NSW guy, freaking reservists contact me all the time. It's like, I don't care, man. I'm going to go, even people that are out of the Navy, I'm going to go out of my way to help, because it's like, we're all cut from the same cloth in that regard. But then, you have those those cultural separations as you go, where it's like, okay, now I'm segregated in a way from all the other sailors, in that I'm a submariner and that I'm a CS, and I take a lot of pride in all those things. But when I gotta be forced, it's like almost like I'm going to go up the flow chart to the top, and that's where I'm going to start. Like, I identify the most with being a sailor. Like, that's step one, and then going like coming down from there. It's like
those are the points of unity, right? So if you look at the Marine Corps is a great example that everyone in the Marine Corps identifies with being a Marine first.
Right. God,
all of them.
I really wish that piece of their culture was part of like all the armed services.
The Navy tries to do their version with like battle stations.
I know. It just doesn't work.
If I could record the amount of eye rolling that happened when my division, my 800 division, were handed our Navy ball caps and they played what was that? Proud to be an American.
Played.
And we were just, oh my God. Like,
I remember it hit with me back then. Like it definitely meant something. Like, the moment was emotional in a little, like, and it was like, it meant something to me, but I never felt like this, like, I feel like I don't know how they do it. I need to talk to a Marine about this, but they somehow, it's like they show up and immediately start programming them to like, that EGA is the target, man. Like the whole time they're like getting after that EGA, and it's like,
I just don't think a ball cap. I couldn't tell you where that ball cap is, but I have Marine friends that they tell me where their original EGA
it's for like getting your anchors.
Bravos is. Yeah,
it's like getting your anchors, man. Like I have I think I've since given them away. I can't remember, but there you have it. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I gave them away, but it was something that I saved for a special moment. I want to say I just gave them to the last LPO I had, but I have to go check.
It's a perfect example. You have that, but you had that moment at 8-9 years in your career, not at the beginning of your career.
Right, and that's what's so and I don't know what it would look like and how we would do it, but man, I wish that was a thing. Like, where it was, there was something built into that process. So when they come out the other end, it's like they have that like just unshakable pride, regardless of how long they did it, what they did, like what community they're from. Every single one of them's a Marine, and it's like you have that camaraderie the same way as like when I go into a place and I find out that somebody's a retired chief and I didn't know going in, there's immediate context, and like I get excited and I want to talk to them. And I see that in the eyes of like, I'll go to the commissary or something in my uniform, especially when I was on an Army base. There'd be these retirees that were just using that Army commissary because it was the closest one to where they lived. And they'd see me walking through and I'd have a chief's anchor on, and they would light up like a freaking Christmas tree and get so excited to see a chief. And they'd be like, "What's up, chief?" Like, and they want to like sit there and talk to me for 20 minutes. And
so in my opinion, it's a shared adversity is probably the easiest way you could explain it, because there are communities within other branches. Army Airborne is a great example, because you don't have to be in the infantry to be an airborne qualified soldier, or like being a ranger, right? Being a tabbed ranger, you go to the course. Now you're a ranger for the rest of your life, right?
I did notice that with a lot of my friends from when I was stationed on that Army base, that the people that were rangers, it was just different.
It's a great example. I went to Army Airborne School in Fort Benning. I'm now a paratrooper for the rest of my life. And every person I meet that's airborne qualified that went to Benning, we have an immediate connection.
Yeah.
Because we all went to Benning. It's the same. I'm sure when the Navy had recruit training in Orlando, and then they still had Great Lakes, there were definite like even the Marines have it. Like, oh, you're a Hollywood Marine. Like, oh, you're out in California. Oh yeah,
because they have
or Parris Island Marines, right? So there's a division there, but they still come back to that we're Marines.
Yeah, and what's weird to me too, though, is like that how do they do? There's a flavor to their shared adversity, because like I would say that back in 2002, the very beginning of 2002, when I went through RTC, like there was shared adversity there. Like it's probably different. It has to be. Otherwise, we'd be getting the same result. But it's like, what are they doing differently that we're not, that creates that pride and just like connection that they have? Because I've always wished that we created the same kind of thing coming out of RTC,
I don't know,
man.
You know, and it's one thing we could talk about was the next paper is the one from John Hagen, who is the eighth MCPON. So in 1997, he wrote an article in Proceedings called Honoring Tradition. So he was a MCPON for 5 years. So you do the math. He picked up in 1992. And he was responsible for realigning the Navy's core values to be in line with the Marine Corps. That they originally were tradition, integrity, and professionalism. Those were the Navy's core values. And his big problem, his regret was that he dropped the tradition. And he goes on in his article, because he was at the academy talking to some midshipmen, and he talks about that. He loved that opportunity to be able to address the brigade at as many times as he could, because that's the future of our
future
officers. COs, future COs, future CNOs, future chairman, joint chiefs of staff, stuff like that. And one of the midshipmen asked, how do we tell the difference between a good tradition and a bad tradition? And his immediate reply was, there are no bad traditions. But he knew that, okay, I need to qualify that. And he said that by their very nature, that naval traditions can only be good. That's why they're preserved, and they ultimately are classified as traditions.
Right.
He knew what he was getting at, and he acknowledged that some traditions can be perverted or abused, and that bad habits can be labeled tradition by the ignorant. So chief's initiation is a tradition. Crossing the line ceremony is a tradition, but or like going to tailhook in the aviation community was a tradition, but all three of those things got perverted over the years, and they got abused, and people took the power that they had and the trust that was given to them by the people going through those events or attending those conferences, and that trust was broken.
Yeah. And so we've obviously seen that happen during the season, right? Where we get shut down.
It's almost like a Deadpool of how long will it take for an initiation to get closed down? What's the first Navy Times article when initiation starts? Who's the first command that gets their season turned off?
Right.
And it's so upsetting that it's within probably the first to 2 weeks, which the first week is the CPO Academy. It's the most scripted version. It's supposed to be the most uniform event across the entire Navy, both deployed, CONUS, people on ships, everywhere are supposed to do the exact same foundational leadership course, and people somehow still manage to get their season canceled.
Yeah, and I've often wondered, because you just described that it's like uniform and scripted, and like I've often wondered, like, if the whole thing was built off of a master course document and had very clear and concise training objectives, and like, obviously there's always going to be slight variance from command to command and community to community, but it's like it should be slight. Yeah. But then
when you went through initiation, did you do Marvin Shields?
No.
Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. So most CBs will do an event called Marvin Shields, where he's one of their Medal of Honor recipients. So they honor him by creating an event where they recreate the events of his Medal of Honor thing. So they have that piece of tradition in their community, and they add that into their initiation,
which is great. And I think
it's great that the Navy allows the leeway to do that, right?
For sure.
In the submarine force, I'm sure you have something that's submarine oriented.
Yeah.
Or
100%.
Provides the ability to honor the tradition of the submarine force.
Yeah. And that part of it I love, and I think is great that leeway exists. But at the same time, it's like when you're creating a naval leader, like I'm not building a submarine chief necessarily, because like I am, but I'm kind of not. So I feel like there's got to be like simultaneously existing within each chief, there needs to be like a baseline standard issue, like Navy chief piece. And then there needs to be that specific warfare community and whatever that organ. We were talking about a demand signal this morning about one of the people on the conversation had done like a no joke doctoral dissertation, and I probably just butchered that description, but a dissertation for his doctorate on he pulled a bunch of chiefs on what like their community required of their leaders. Like if you're the end user in that community, what do you need out of your chiefs? And he said it was like just community to community, it was wildly varying.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, right? Like it's like I have this leader that I'm training to be a chief, and all chiefs should be built on the same foundation. But then it needs to be allowed to also be specific to that warfare community's needs, right? So it's like I need to allow that.
It's kind of a paradox.
Yeah, it is. It's very
it's captured in the CPO creed, where it says that your duties and responsibility do not appear in print. They cannot be referenced by file name, by name, number, or file, and that they only are preserved as so long as the chief petty officers, before you, with you, and after you maintain their, the standards, or advance our position. I'm sure I didn't quote that word for word, but that's the spirit.
Pretty
of it.
Close.
Yeah, there's definitely a room for maneuvering between the different communities of what is the expectation. And the expectations, in my opinion, are always driven from the crew and from the wardroom. The chiefs are middle at the baseline. They are middle management. Okay, that they are the go-between of the officers above us and the enlisted people by, with, and through us. So as long as chiefs understand that we're not going to be in command, right. The officers are in command.
That's interesting that you say that. Like I had a CO when I was checking out, I was getting a signature on my Cobb card on the PQS. And he said, he's like, we talked a bunch, but at the end, he's like, look, if you don't remember anything else I said, remember this. And he goes like, when you're in that job, this is not a Master Chief's command tour. Like you're not in command. Like you're here to assist a commanding officer with their command. Like you're a resource. And like, yes, we're going to depend on you. Yes, you're very important to the success of like blah, blah, blah. But he goes, a lot of Cobbs, well, not a lot, but like he said, he's seen Cobbs like kind of run afoul of that concept where it's like, look, you're there to support the vision and strategic direction of the CO and whatever mission tasking that CO has to execute. And so it's like, don't lose sight of that you're there to support that CO. It's like, this is not your command tour, so that when a CO makes an unpopular decision or like after incorporating all of your experience and advice decides to go away you're not happy with, like, you don't get to fight that and go a different direction because like you're unhappy with it. It's not your command tour. Like you need to walk away from that knowing that you're there to support that CO. And at first when he said it, I was kind of like, I was like, I don't know how I feel about what you're saying right now. But then I thought about it for a while and processed it. I'm like, no, I'm a leg in the triad, right? Like I'm holding up one end of it, but at the end of the day, like the burden of command falls on the commander, like, and it's,
I mean, the CMC will have the cookie on the pocket,
right? But
it's not, the star and the wreath of command,
right?
It's wholly different. You are there. I mean, you made it to the table. Your voice will now be heard. But obviously I'm not a CMC, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, ditto.
I don't know the trials and tribulations of what it actually is day to day. But on the surface of what I've observed, having many CMCs, that's what, and working with officers what are your expectations, sir? What do you think you would expect from a chief petty officer or from your master chiefs? What would you expect from the chief's mess? And officers at every level that I've talked to, from the junior officer level, the mid-grade, 04, 05, and then the senior grade, like commodores and captains, and moving on up, it all comes back to, they want that support.
Yeah.
They want the support, and they don't want you to browbeat them for no reason to try to dominate them. You're there to assist them in the ability to command and get the mission done.
Yeah. And I had a moment the other day that like, it was sobering in a way because I have this like pre-programmed, like almost like a Napoleon complex in a way of being a cook, right? Like and it's worse in the submarine community than it is in the surface community, but it exists everywhere, I think, where you're kind of viewed as like default less intelligent until you prove yourself otherwise and stuff like that. So I fought against that stereotype for a long time. And I mean, I generally win and earn the trust of those people, but it's like I'm at a different starting point than everyone else. And so I'm on a flag staff, and there's a lot of like post-tour command guys there from submarines. And I had one of the deputies, he's full bird captain. He's commanded a submarine at sea. And he grabs me in the P-way and he goes, hey, senior, how much experience do you have topside? And I was like, what do you mean? Like topside safety, like line handling stuff? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, well, in what context? Like, are we talking about just like personnel transfers at sea and stuff? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, oh, like a bunch. What's up? What do you need? And he started asking me these questions about like an evolution and could we do it this different way that's not normal because they're having a material issue with one of the hatches. Like, could we use the other hatch? And he's like asking me all these questions about operating a submarine at sea, topside safety stuff. Like, could we do it? Is it safe? What are some of the risks that you see, or like some of the ways that we would need to mitigate risk and stuff like that? We had like a 10-minute conversation, and then he's like, all right, thanks, senior. And he walks away. And then I like go down to my office and sit down, and I'm like sitting there thinking about it. I'm like,
it's like, where did that captain go next? You know, what was the next meeting that day?
Like a full bird captain stopped me in the P-way and asked for like my opinion on and so where did he go next? What phone con was he on? Who was off?
What precipitated those specific, like what phone call was he on 10 minutes prior to that? Was someone just blowing smoke up his ass and he wasn't equipped with the answers?
Yeah.
And then like, hold on, let me check myself here. Hey, come here, senior.
But then he was seeking information to make an educated decision or advise somebody on what he thought should happen, like, because there's probably a bunch of other stuff that goes into it that he's already got the data on, and he's going to trust me and my experience to figure into that calculus and then go make a decision based on what he just talked to me about. And it kind of struck me as like, whoa, like this dude trusts me enough to have that conversation with me and take my experience with the type of like worth that I don't necessarily immediately associate with it.
To me, that seems like an officer I'd want to work for.
For sure.
But a piece that I picked up from a podcast I was listening to recently was, what's the difference between a professional and an amateur? I mean, there's an obvious definition where like professionals get paid, amateurs don't get paid. Like, and we all pull a paycheck from the Navy.
Yeah.
So we're all technically professionals. We're in the profession of arms. But what they were getting at was a professional will train to the point where they can't get it wrong. An amateur just trains until they get it right.
Yeah,
with initiation, it should be like a retraining every year. And I feel like I hope to God I'm not alone on this. I feel like I learn more doing it every year as on the other side of it than I ever did when I was going through initiation. Because during initiation, you're seeing everything new for the first time. First time you tie on your shoes. First time you're putting on your pants. First time you're putting on your shirt. It's all brand new to you. Where if you've been wearing khakis for a little while, you realize, okay, the little button flap on the back of the pants, got to have that done. Yeah, maybe my brass, I can just scent that up, and there you go, got good gig line. I've picked up more, and obviously you can only do initiation once, so it's done and done with, but. I've seen it with genuines that don't rededicate themselves to initiation every year, and they just phone it in.
Oh yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. And I was talking as I was recording intros and outros for a couple of episodes that I'm going to be editing soon. I said something to that effect of, I get so much out of having conversations on the podcast with everyone, like, because I talk to guys like you that are, I mean, you've been around a while, you're a chief, like I talk to chiefs all the time, but I've learned a ton just from talking to like I had that NSW tech that was a first class. I had like Megan Wilcoxon that was like a third class before she got out and started Scuttlebutt. Like just a bunch of people, junior, senior, whatever, officers, all over the place.
And NSW tech, he told it like it was. Like,
yeah, I really
had to listen to his episode like 2 times just to pick up on everything he was putting down, because holy, like the technician lifestyle of actually being over there and supporting them, he nailed just about every piece of gradient, like granularity working with NSW.
I really enjoyed talking to him, and it's that type of dialogue that I don't think happens enough, especially even when I seek it out on the submarine to get junior listed to talk to. Like there are people that get comfortable enough and trust me enough to really open up and have that type of conversation. But there's this disarming aspect to the anonymity of the podcast and stuff that when I get people on, it's like they're just more willing to have that type of a conversation. And so like I learned so much from it. And so like the season is the same way, where it's like you have a ton of conversations, and then I don't know if I'm assuming everyone else does, but like even like the selectees leave the room, and then we have a bunch of other conversations about like how are we gonna get this one selectee to snap out of it, and how are we gonna direct this other one, and this one gets it, but we need to make sure they learn this other thing. So like we'll have a lot of conversations about like the strategy of developing that selectee and getting them to get the light bulb to turn on or whatever and reach some milestone. And so like just those conversations, the actual interacting with selectees, the studying of the material, getting to teach stuff like the CPO leadership course and teaching the creed and all that stuff. And like, yeah, I just, every year it's like there's an education on both sides of it, and there should be an education on both sides of it.
Yeah, I think the way that I'm trying to reduce the amount of abuse, man, we are really jumping around here. But I'm trying to like reduce the amount of abuse that I'm seeing, or at least is perceived. Yeah. Is when we do our committees, I want that genuine to explain the actual purpose of that evolution.
Yeah. Yep.
To everybody, and because like, okay, perfect example. Last year, there was some very clear guidance issued about respecting, having this needs to come from a place of respect at all points. The selectees will be respected. They will not be denigrated or abused, and it's the language is always used, but I took it on board as like a challenge. Like, okay, if this is what Smith is putting out, this is what we're going to stick to. And I know I'm junior in this mess, so let's see what I can bring up and how pissed off people will be, because that reaction will feed to my perception of what this mess is about. So they brought up one of their first events, which was the introductions, right? So they're going to come in, introduce themselves, and the way that they had labeled it was shock and awe. Yeah. And I said, "And what does this mean?"
What are we accomplishing?
The senior chief running the season, he explained it, and I said, "Okay, but I have this guidance right here from MCPON that says this. So please explain." And I don't want to do this offline. I want to do it right here in front of everybody.
Yeah.
What does this do? What are we achieving with this?
What is it explicitly says in laying the keel that there will be a clear and concise training objective attached to every single event. Yep. So explain the training, because that was something that I got like mind-bendingly frustrated with running a bunch of seasons when I was in Virginia. Was like, I would talk to that master guns all the time that had gone through the season, and me and him were we would both have long faces during events where everybody's screaming for no reason, and I'm just looking at him, he's looking at me, and I'm just like, you think what I'm thinking? And yeah, like it was just so disgusted with the shock and awe, quote unquote, like attitude, where it's like we're in a training session and it's just this barking at them for the sake of barking at them. And it's like, what are we accomplishing? Like, what's the training objective? And so that was like when I would run the season every year, man, it's like I've got to the point where I had assignment sheets for the chiefs running the event that said, like, you're responsible for the following event. This is the training objective. These are the things you're responsible for, so that there's no like wiggle room in that. Like, this is the point of the event, point blank period. Like, that's it. There's no like, you need to accomplish this training objective. And then we'll talk about like how you're going to accomplish it. And there might be some like pieces where we're trying to stress them out on purpose and see how they prioritize and execute the task. Like, got it. But we're not just going to scream and yell and just face punch for the sake of doing those things. And that's what drives me nuts, man. It's just like it. So there's so much of that crap that happens for no damn reason.
I mean, my two proposed solutions to that was the one we were talking about, should we codify this process? Should we actually enshrine it, enable instruction? And should we have a master course document that is beyond just the first week CPO Academy? What I would say, the true wicket that you are required to do to put on your anchors, regardless of frocking privileges. So the leadership component, the leadership academy component, and the PRT. And that's it, right? You could literally say, 2-finger salute to this whole process. I'm not doing it. And see you later. I don't care about getting a little card for my wallet, and I don't really care about going in the chief's mess. And that person could be deferred frocking from the chain of command, because maybe the CMC goes and talks to their CO and says, hey, this person did not participate in initiation, withhold frocking privileges. I don't know. I've never seen it happen, but I've heard stories.
Used to, but now it's mandatory that you participate in the season, so you can't, it's not a thing anymore.
So then you have to ask yourself, okay, we've now made this mandatory. How much, what constitutes mandatory? Physically being there and converting oxygen to carbon dioxide. So you could also just say, okay, now you've literally, people that are going to go into it saying this is a waste of time are not going to generally have their opinion changed.
Yeah, well,
if the season's being executed poorly.
Yeah, right. And that's what I'm saying with, like, when I say codified in a master training document, everybody's standardized, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't want a cookie cutter season everywhere. Like we talked about, right? There's certain things that just wouldn't translate, and thus we would have selectees that aren't interested in doing it. If Big Surface Navy cut a document and said this is what you're doing and delivered it to the EOD community, like, you guys would be disillusioned in 5 seconds and be like, this is garbage. But what I would like to see is a master course document that provides the direction of those training objectives, like, and then allows you to tailor make that to your community and the resources you have at hand, and allow you to do things like use the CB Medal of Honor winter event and stuff like that. But it's like, I feel like what gets lost is the training objective. And I would want it to be an open source document that everybody can look at, so that they understand that there are, in fact, training objectives, and that what those training objectives are, so that a kid can sit there and look at it and be like, oh, okay, now I understand why we're doing this. At least I don't think we'll ever not be in a place where it's like anything, man. It's like, it's always going to be good, great, or terrible based on the quality of the facilitation or instruction or whatever. Like the people that are putting it on, it's like, if you're super invested and passionate about it, like, that's going to translate. And I think that sailor we're talking about is going to care. And I can say that with some conviction, because, like, everywhere I've ever went where we did like a CPO 365 phase 1 or Sailor 360 or whatever the hell they're calling it this Tuesday, it's been a check in the box, put everybody in a room, artificially block off an hour, and they convert oxygen to carbon dioxide, right? That's what it was, and everybody hated it, and nobody wanted to show up. And I started to do it on my last submarine. When I first checked in, we had, like, on a ballistic missile submarine, you have 2 crews, so you have time where you're in what's called an off-crew administration building, and you don't have the submarines at sea. You're the other crew. You're doing training and quals and proficiency things and planning and logistics. I mean,
you could just say you were in the OCAB.
Yeah, not everybody was in it. So shut up. We were in the OCAB, and that's where I was. So I said, I'm like, hey, I want to do this. I want to run at the time it was called phase 1 still. So I want to run a phase 1 program. Cobb's like pumped. He's like, yeah, do it. It's awesome. So the first lesson that I did was like a history and heritage thing, because I'm a big history guy. I love chief heritage, and I collect a lot of stuff. Like, my office or podcast studio or whatever you want to call it looks like a freaking museum. And so I took a lot of the stuff that I have. Like, I collect combo covers. I have one from the early 1800s, like the train conductor style hat with an old school anchor
with a button. Yeah,
I don't have the button yet. That's on I have a replica in a case just because it looks cool. But I haven't actually.
That is the original pin.
I haven't actually gotten my hands on that button yet. I've tried a few times, but the few times I've found it, it's been obscenely expensive. But so is the combo cover.
Everyone thinks it's at USN that like curves down the chain.
Yep.
It's like,
that's the combo cover that I found, and I bought that with that style of an anchor on it. But yeah, it's not. It's like it looks like the button from your dress blues.
It looks like an STV button.
Yeah, it's like the size of a $50. But it's anyway. So yeah, I have a lot of stuff like that, man. I got like a service record from the early 1900s. That's like this crazy fold up thing in a green like leather trifold that's like the size of your hand. And then I've got I collect combo cover anchors. I collect like documents, old books, stuff like that. And so like I took a ton of stuff in, like whatever I could carry in this big crate, and set it all up on a table, and did like a lesson, and I was like handing stuff around and like letting them touch it because it's all my property. So it's not even like I borrowed it and you got to be nice to it. It's like if somebody screws it up, I'm not going to be too upset about it. But like it blew their mind. Like when they got to see it all, they got to touch it all. We talked about it. They got to ask questions. I told them things they didn't know. And I think something figures in where it's like, yeah, like I'm an instructor. I got an MTS. Like I know what I'm doing, but I'm passionate about it. And you can't fake the investment. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to convince them that this stuff is important by just barking at them. Like they could tell I genuinely cared about not just the topic, but conveying it to them. And so it's just like,
it's the equivalent of like writing hold for applause underneath your speech. But if there's no applause, like
it's awkward.
I can't manufacture that. That's the actual like real thing.
Yeah, man. And it was, and then I did another one where I brought an old crusty CMC mentor of mine in that had done 3 cob tours. One of them was that Projects platform. And I just brought him in.
Underachiever, really. You probably shouldn't have brought him in.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, so brought him in to talk to, and I had that one because, like, I guess word had spread from the first couple lessons. By the time I got him in a room, I had like 50 first classes in this room, and it was multiple crews of different submarines because I kind of put it out to other boats, and like they were hanging on his every word. They could like when they were done, everybody was shaking his hand, and like they were just so excited about it. And I'm like, so it's not impossible. Like it's 100% doable, but I feel like there's a part of me, like an idealist freaking pie in the sky part of me that thinks there's a way to do it almost where you like send facilitators out to like fleet concentration areas and like maybe I can like be the chief season guy and like help people. But then it's like, I don't think that would work. But it's like, there's just something there where it's like that passion and stuff needs to be conveyed.
One part that I took away from that tradition of change was that there was not, in like World War II, there was not a single initiation time, that chiefs were promoted throughout different parts of the year, and that the crew would just grab them and throw them in water, and that was it. That was now a chief. Just your CO would be there on the pier, and they'd whip you into the water. And they had that funny story about, he says, no man will throw me into a body of water today.
Yeah,
and that's fine. And then
the waves
the waves do it at the pool at Pearl Harbor. That's pretty funny, One thing I keep on coming back to is this last little bit on the John Hagen thing, which I'll quote him directly. It says, "When the initiation is done right, we ensure a deeper understanding of our traditions, our heritage, and our values, not only in the newest chiefs, but in the entire CPO mess. These are noble and challenging goals, and the chiefs mess is achieving them." Now, granted, he wrote this in 1997.
Yeah.
And then the next article that I have is written in 1999 by Chief Robert Lanham. It's the title is Ask the Chief, and it's in Proceedings. By the way, if you don't have a Naval Institute subscription, I mean, I don't make any money off of it, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, you should get one.
It's not as expensive as I thought it was going to be. He wrote an article called Ask the Chief, and it was the Enlisted Prize Essay Contest winner that year. And the part that I came out of his was he breaks down the different disconnections between the chief's mess and the rest of the fleet. And he blames, well, he doesn't blame, but he cites as causes of it the division officers, the junior officers, the lower enlisted, and then the chiefs themselves. And his last point was finally some, if not most, of the blame rests with us chiefs. He said that positive leadership, take care of your people, have given way to high visibility political maneuvering designed to land oneself on the next promotion list, and that we can't be counted on anymore to give the sanity check, that we're afflicted with the bobblehead doll syndrome, where regardless of what the upper echelon's saying, if it's has impact on the crew, impact on the equipment, impact on mission, they're just going to say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am.
Yeah.
And like no ma'am's probably not even in, no sir, no ma'am's probably not even in their vocabulary. And he says that as a mess, we've checked our backbones at the door, and that we've lost our tell it like it is leadership that resulted in our selection in the first place.
And this was 99.
99. So
Good
anyone
grief.
that says, like, oh my God, this is such a new thing, Sadly, this is not a new thing. This has
Right.
been a problem for a really, really long time.
That's interesting.
And I bring it up because, you joined in 2002. I mean, I want to think, Chief Lanham was probably still on active duty when you arrived.
Probably.
The Chiefs, when you arrived, what was your opinion of the Chiefs when you first, because that's like, when you walk into Golden 13 at Great Lakes and you see that first RDC, some people, that's sort of like a whoa moment,
Yeah, it was different. So it's tough to know if Chiefs were different without having been one.
Yeah, right.
But my view of them when I was junior enlisted was definitely different than I think it is now, as far as, and that I think it is for junior enlisted now, where like I was still like fear and respect type of outlook. I didn't understand that. Like, I guess I didn't treat Chiefs like they were human beings like I do now either. They were robots to me. Like, they could do no wrong. They were like naval superheroes. It changed as I became more senior on my first submarine. But even then it was like, I just got mad because they were making me do stuff I didn't want to do, or telling me I couldn't yell at my first class because he was an idiot. But I started to notice more flaws, but even back then, I think that I just wasn't aware of any issues if there were any. I don't think I became aware of them until right at the end as I went to my next shore duty, because I had a cob that basically got fired, and then I started, just started to learn more about it.
I think
I progressed, but
probably the first chief I saw get fired, that kind of humanized the Chiefs pretty quickly, because I got popped on a DUI, and it was like, well, see you later, CMC.
Yeah, and I remember I had that really bad cob, and then that very first shore duty, and I don't remember how far I was into it, but I'm acutely aware of the memory where they made this chief stand up in front of we went to the movie theater in Groton, Connecticut, where my first shore duty was. And they made this cat stand up in front of a couple hundred submariners. I mean, it was a completely full theater, and talk about he got a DUI and like how he screwed up, and basically made him own it, and like explain to them like why, like how he arrived at that crappy decision and how stupid it was. And all, it was like part of his penance, I guess. So I remembered that too, and I was just like, "Holy crap!" Like, I didn't think Chiefs were that stupid. It just kept happening. So I feel like it was probably Chiefs back then were probably a lot more similar to what I encounter nowadays than I thought. I just wasn't aware. You know what I mean? Like, from not having been in the mess.
There's a YouTube video. I think it's like The Chiefs, and they do like photochrome, like Super 8mm footage of a Navy ship getting underway. And it's so funny because they have like that, like chicka waka like really trippy 70s music. And they try to like profile these different chiefs on this destroyer that's getting underway. I think it's a nuclear destroyer. I think it was one of those, like kind of weird ones when the Enterprise came out. And so they have a OS Master Chief who's like using a sextant on the ship, and like, they're trying to like profile that, he's like teaching the junior officers as like a Master Chief. Well, then moving on down further, like I said, it's like in the 70s, they talk about like some ET chief who's only been in for like 8-9 years, and that he's part of the new breed of chief petty officer, and it was like, okay, so the same exact crap that people get for picking up chief quote unquote too early, or maybe excelling at a younger age because they're meeting the Navy's requirements, and then they had the same exact stuff going on back then too.
And do you even think it? I go back and forth about it in my head about like, do you even think it matters? Because like I guess if we had a better system for selection, because I think there's flaws in it that allow people that are too young in their development like to advance, and then they're not prepared and they have issues. But like, so like guys like you made it pretty quickly, and but you also seemed like not only did you meet all of the requirements of the EOD community, but it's like you just seemed ready. And there are dudes like you out there where I encountered a nuke mechanic chief that made it in like 7 years. And in my head, I'm like, that's just too fast. Like, how are you a product of your experience and blah, 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 if you don't have any experience? But this dude he was amazing, and he still is. And he's a buddy of mine. And it's like, so there are obviously going to be exceptions, but at the same time, I look at it like, I just feel like there's a requisite amount of experience required to succeed in that role because of the demands and the expectations of a chief petty officer. So it's like, how do you feel about it in general? Like, I'm curious.
The counter argument for you, let's say, how much power do you think a 7 or 8 year lieutenant has, in charge of a division? Probably second tour lieutenant, probably on their third ship. They're a solid gold swope in. They're probably in charge of 25 to 30 people on 2 different watch rotations. And they have probably 3 chiefs underneath them with a senior chief, and their job is to run and administer that division. And they've only been in the Navy for 8 years.
Yeah.
And in certain cases, they're the officer of the deck. They're in charge of safety of the ship.
Right. So, but yeah,
I'm just saying, if our interpretation of what creates excellence, or some sort of, to use a Paul Kingsbury, a power base of knowledge, or institutional knowledge, or like personal knowledge, are we metering this off of years, or are we doing it off of the experience the person has actually had? Because I can tell you, there are people that have been in the Navy for 20 years that don't have the same experiences as someone that is in their first year in the Navy. And I mean, like, life experiences. They could be a very sheltered 20 years, vice someone that maybe did a lot of stuff before they joined the Navy, and now here they are.
I guess I'm looking at it like, because I'd feel like just like guys like you are the anomaly in the younger, like the guys that make it quicker and just probably don't have the type of issues adapting that I'm thinking about. I would assume. I don't know. Those the sheltered 20-year chiefs are probably anomalies too, but I'm thinking
there are communities within the Navy that need people sooner.
Yeah.
That their technical aspects are matured at a higher rate than people in other ratings. Like, not to dog on bosun mates. Bosun mates is like, their rating is a lifestyle rating. Like, you will take being a bosun mate for probably a 25-year career and still not have a lot of it down.
Right.
Because there is just so much to learn about being, that rating. And it's so steeped in tradition that people will, really glob onto that. Where there are other technical ratings where the scope is smaller, but the intensity of it is so high that they could be a freaking high tone technician in that rating very quickly, and then they're operating at a high level.
Right, and I guess.
So, like, are we a mile wide and an inch deep, or
I don't. Yeah, I don't. I don't entirely disagree with everything that you're saying. It's just I find that you're talking like community to community. We're talking about the specifics to that community. But so, like, if I have a nuclear trained chief that goes through faster because of all the things you just described, but then I have to expect a lot of the same things outside of the technical realm from that chief that I do from a chief from another community that took 15 years to make it. And so they have the experience with all of the institutional expertise that they need to be successful as a chief?
I think you're trying to measure immeasurables, that there are certain things that are intangible to our testing and evaluation processes of how we assess and select chief petty officers that will never find its way onto a examination or Scantron sheet. That, like, a good example, like, what do you do if a sailor dies?
I mean,
do you like the process of that?
Yeah.
Of a sailor dying, that's not something a lot of people are very familiar with.
Yeah.
But if you're a Keiko, or, you've had that experience, you were assigned that role, you know what to do. You are that casualty person where, or like, I got this guy who's doing the TAD and it exceeds 30 days. And now he has to set up partial payments and navigating DTS and all of its intricacies. Do I need to pull in the yeoman to teach me how to do this? Or do I already know this because I experienced this at a certain phase in my career?
Right.
So I know how to handle this specific situation because I had the experience in this situation. Does that mean I need to be at 12 years to have had that experience? Or did I learn that my first year in the Navy?
Yeah.
And now I'm coming back to it.
Yeah.
I think, the bellwether of a good chief is someone that's going to try to continually increase their knowledge at every facet.
Yeah.
And that we don't just, I don't know if there has been ever a selectee that walked into initiation that after the first meeting, everyone's like, hey, this is just a formality for this guy,
Yeah, I've had a couple of selectees that it was like, not that it's a formality, but it's like they're going to do well. Like they're going to take to this really well.
But now you get 6 weeks to develop them.
Yeah. Yep.
Further. So imagine how much sharper can you hone that edge?
Right.
You get a guy that comes in, like, okay, great example. You go into initiation, probably the first time they started asking you heritage questions, you probably blew them fuck away. Right?
I mean, some of them, yeah.
And then the rest of your classmates, the rest of your brothers and sisters were looking at you like, hey, shut up, man. Like, they're going to expect that we all
I honestly was probably better at the institutional stuff, like the dork, like I'm the dork that's always in the instruction with a highlighter. So like I probably...
Or they asked you, who was the first female chief? And you said Loretta Perfectus Walsh. And everyone said, oh, this guy. Oh,
this is okay. You're not allowed to talk anymore.
He's a middle name guy. He knows He knows that,
Yeah. That's the best part
by the way.
Of the name. Perfect.
Great episode, by the way.
Thanks.
But that's what I'm talking about. You have those kind of people, or you have like the instruction nerds that like come in and they're like, actually, that's OpNav, and that's not a nav admin. That's a this and this, and you're like, oh, great.
Beepers instruction, blah 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 blah.
Oof. You need those people though.
Yep.
It takes every frickin' person in that mess to make the Navy work. So
yeah,
we got kind of really far afield, but those are the things I could see instituting. Also, the other thing that I think should be instituted is you should allow the E6s that were non-selected to come and be at the training events, except for final night.
Yeah, I definitely think that they should be more involved. I think there's some changes that need to happen to parts of the 6-week training cycle so that they could be more involved. But yeah, I definitely, because I guess it's a balance is what I'm saying. Like, so there's a part, it's like if your kid has a birthday party and everybody gets presents. It's like these guys and gals were selected to chief. And so there's parts of it, and final night obviously being probably the largest part, but there's parts of it that I think should be exclusive to those selectees. But I do think there's a lot of value in, especially those first classes, but even like junior sailors. Like I continually use the example of, because it's burned into my memory because I was there, is when I did my final night, we did our charge book signing with the CO. It was like an event. We were doing this marching around base and running around and doing all these events. And in midday on the first day, we did a charge book signing with our COs. And so we're all on NWs. And there's this big turtleback of a submarine of a BN. It's called Deterrent Park in Bangor, Washington. And they do a lot of like ceremonies and stuff out there. It's a pretty cool venue where like the turtleback's a bunch of bricks that people bought and like put names on as like memorials and stuff. So the COs and the CMCs are all standing like by command on the turtleback of the submarine. There's like 20 commands there. And then all the selectees from each command are lined up in front of their CO, and one at a time we would step up, present our charge book and get some wisdom dropped on us and get our signature. And we did it all just out in the open like that, huge gathering, like a bunch of people around. And so sailors just stopped what they were doing and started to gather around and see what was going on. And I thought it was really, really cool that we did it that way and that we allowed it to like be viewed by the public, because you saw those sailors stopping and like, what's going on over there? And like, you could see it on their face. Like, this is really cool. Like, what are they doing? Blah, blah, blah. And so they were asking questions, and some of the region CMCs or just some chiefs that were milling about they were explaining it to him. Like, this is what's happening, and telling him like, it was.
They weren't like, hey, kick rocks, nerd.
No,
they were actually
not
like
at all.
Taking the time. Yeah.
It was so cool, man. And that's burned into my memory as like a really significant example of a lot of this stuff can be viewed by the public and like should be viewed by the public because there's so many benefits there. Like,
and
you air out.
Yeah, you're still preserving the tradition of it. It's still, but it's removing this, I'm going to say, stigma.
Yeah, you're creating transparency and getting these sailors excited about it at the same time. Like, it's so cool. Like, I think we could do so much more of that.
Have you disclosed the contents of your vessel to some of your junior sailors?
I think so.
So in the same instance, you're talking about like, okay, bringing like some old fish on, or you're bringing in heritage items and stuff. I have heritage items in my vessel. So like I have my Liberty cuffs in my vessel. I have challenge coins in my vessel. I have my spoon from initiation in my vessel. And like, I show them my book and I'm like, this is it. Like, let's take the mask off of this. Like, it's not the Necronomicon. Like, it's not like some freaking esoteric book of spells where I'm going to open up
I want to say
a portal.
I've done it with like first classes that were eligible. I don't know if I've sat with like a junior, like one of my division sailors and done it, but it's possible. Cause I'm that kind of guy, like where it's, I would, if it was in the office and like my CS2 was like, hey senior, what's that? I would just sit down, close the door. Like it's possible. I don't remember explicitly, but I mean, I update it consistently. So like I have, usually before each season, I'll have like a bunch of crap that I've thrown in my vessel that I need to like put in my book somewhere, or like there's parts that I've like added to the inside of the vessel and stuff like that. But
and I bring mine to initiation.
Oh yeah. I 100%.
Like, even still. And like, I'm alone in bringing mine. Not a lot of genuines are bringing theirs, but I think, as I move forward, it's sort of I feel like through peer pressure, I'll be able to good peer pressure. I'll be able to get them to bring theirs.
Hope so, because I don't think a lot of people. I think a lot of people put it on a shelf and it collects dust, and I hate that because every year before the season, I pull it down off because it's on a shelf right next to that combo cover I was talking about, and it's like I pull it down and I update it, and as I'm updating it, I get to go through it and see all those things, man. And I got like a bunch of crap from the podcast in there where sailors have reached out and thanked me for whatever I like helping or the message or whatever. I have a lot of my prior A school students sending me like Facebook messages talking, like saying things about me as a leader that like I would never think of myself, but like I did something of value to them, and it was like a thank you or just recognition of some kind. That it's like, that's the stuff that means something to me. I have this card. There was an A school student that she got orders to Norfolk, and she's from San Diego. And so like any A school student that wants to go home and like has a meltdown as a result. But this chief that was her instructor, she was a selectee that I sponsored. And so then she was one of my chiefs, and she comes into my office when I'm the SEL and is like, hey, I got this problem with the sailor. She got orders to Norfolk, and I think she needs to go to San Diego. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a problem. That sounds like somebody's upset they're not going to the Sunshine State or whatever, California. I think that's Florida, whatever California is. And so, but then she's like, no, look, like she like started blubbering, like fell apart. And it was because she's saying her mom has cancer and it's terminal. She's got about 6 months. And that's what she wants to be close to home until that's over. And
now's your time to shine. You better make it happen.
And so I was like, look, I need you to walk out of this office and go vet this without being insensitive to the extent that you can. And when you have a warm fuzzy that she's not hustling you, then come back and tell me, and I will start doing what I need to do to make this happen. She came back like 2 hours later. She's like, this is legit. And I'm like, all right. And so I picked up the phones, called the people, did the thing. And we got her to San Diego, and I have a thank you card from her that got left. I never even got to talk to her. There was just this card on my desk, and I opened it up, man. And it was,
that's awesome, dude. I feel like a lot of sailors think that kind of stuff ends up in the trash, and it's like, no, we hang on to that stuff.
It's in my charge book. Yeah. It's in my charge book. And every time I see it, I get borderline emotional, because it's just like I got to do that. You know what I mean? Like, it was so cool.
I have a unique thing in my charge book. I have a guy that signed my charge book who got kicked out of the Navy. I have his Navy Times article on his page. And
really, that's interesting.
I was flipping through it, and I have to obviously stop by it every time and go, oh, this is a good reminder of like what not to do.
Yeah.
And I use that as like a teachable thing. Like look at what, because it's perfect. I get both sides of the coin.
Mm-hmm.
I get what he wrote in my book.
That's cool.
And then I get the article of like how he went against all the same
everything
stuff that
he said.
Yeah. He totally did not live up to anything that he wrote. And I'm like, that's such a great, I mean, it's tragic, but at the same time, it's a piece that if you do it right, and we could teach that piece of the heritage, that doesn't have to be a secret piece of heritage.
Yeah.
You know? And there are genuines that I know that are like, no, you can't show their eyeballs will bleed. Why? You know, it'll be like in Indiana Jones, like the ark opens and everyone freaking melts.
Right.
You know, like
that's definitely one of the things where I'm like, but why? Like, but why? Like, because there are things like I don't think they should witness me getting so if I'm CSSC select, right, and I'm sitting down with you and you're giving me a charge book entry, like that's a private moment. Because those things, a lot of times, especially if you're doing it with a mentor or you're doing it with somebody that like is important to you, or maybe you're just doing it with a chief that is speaking to you in that moment about a thing that is hitting home, it's like that can get really vulnerable and emotional sometimes. And it's like, so those are the
I tell like one or two stories where I had times in the Navy where a chief like really bailed me out. Yeah. I don't really generally like to broadcast those stories. Right. To the everybody, to the everyman, because it really is like you're saying, like a vulnerable moment. And if everyone knows that story about me, it kind of loses its effectiveness as well. True. It's a good teachable story. So like, I agree that there are times where, especially depending on the selectee too, like if it's a selectee you really just genuinely don't know, you know, you could probably do that charge somewhere with a little bit of traffic around. But if it's someone you really put a lot into, like your specific one that you're sponsoring, you're doing that one privately.
And I think that
it's going to be more than just what's written down.
Yeah, like Final Night Acceptance and certain other event, like most of Final Night, because there's an opportunity kind of all the time for stuff like that to happen, depending on the event. I think a lot of that should be private. Like, I don't think we can't talk about what happens, but I don't think there should be an audience when it does. Stuff, but there's a lot. Like 90% of what we do during the 6 weeks, I feel like could be public. Like you could put some first classes in the back room and say, you know, like seen but not heard before we start, and then do selectee training. Again, it depends on what you're doing, because you could catch a moment that they don't need to be in there for. Because I mean, I've had moments like we had one of my buddies he was an EDMC, and we were in just a normal selectee training, and they, you know, weren't getting it, didn't accomplish something. But I forget what exactly. There was a situation that came up that this EDMC brought up a situation where a sailor got killed for not, you know, like he didn't follow a procedure, or somebody else did something unsafe and it got this kid killed. And he's constantly, you know, questioning what he could have done and all. And so it's like, it gets emotional. Like he put that sailor in a position to feel like raw and exposed, because he's like telling him this really emotional and raw story. And like, you could have done something that put a sailor at risk by not listening. And
to me, that ties to the instruction that we receive every year that says that you will not be embarrassed publicly.
Right.
And
right.
That, you know, you'll not be witnessed by, like, these. There is a reason why there's certain things that are supposed to be done
are private
in a secured classroom.
Yep.
But I think what we're talking about doing, where you allow more E6s to be there that are maybe non-selected E6s, or, you know, let's just say maybe some junior officers to be there too.
Yeah,
that might not be the worst thing either, because leadership lessons are very important, and we're talking about developing a future organization, because we're planting trees we're never going to see. So if we start doing that, it's going to increase the accountability as well, because you get some freaking chest thumping dude that this is his chance of the year to be the jock when he's always been the nerd, and he gets to talk down to all these selectees because he's a genuine chief. And it's like, okay, but what if there's an outside person watching? You know?
Yep. Yeah.
Are you still going to be that a-hole?
And I think you gain a lot of, in addition to like, yeah, everybody's going to act like they normally would instead of acting like an idiot when they think that no one's looking or whatever prompts a guy to act like that. I don't know. But then, like, I think you could gain a lot of like cohesion just by like involving the JOs, involving some junior people like seconds and firsts like that, where a lot of the stuff that makes these adversarial viewpoints and relationships happen, it's just caused by like unknowns that are then like that gap is then plugged by the sailor's imagination. And so if you're showing
it's like a DRB, right? Like, okay, the door's closed on the DRB. That's the crew is only going to hear through scuttlebutt what occurred during that DRB. And it's most likely going to come from either the sailor that was now disgruntled because they just got disciplined, or they're going to imagine what happened, and their imagination can run wild. Right. I can tell you, like we've talked about DRBs before. Like, I don't know why there has to be 16 chiefs at your DRB. I don't know why. It does not need to happen, and a DRB does not need to be a shouting match. It's literally a disciplinary review board. We're reviewing your discipline actions. What brought you to in front of us is because there was a deficiency, and now let's get to the root cause of it to see if this needs to go further. And if it doesn't, and we've made a decision that we're going to recommend to the CO, this can be handled at the lowest level possible. Yeah. We're not going to recommend captain's mast. That the discipline can be enforced there, and we can move forward.
Right.
But the crew is going to be like, oh my God, they ripped his head off, and they were telling him he was this, and you're like, wow, dude, this is like not at all what we were here for. We're just trying to get to the cause of what, like, we're just here to talk about the PIO, and then, okay, what can we do to fix this in the future so this doesn't happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously there may be some punitive stuff that comes out of that, and no one wants to, you don't go to a DRB because you did such a great job, but you know, but
sometimes like,
how else are you going to enforce discipline?
Yeah. In asking the question and digging to the answer of why are they here in the first place, a lot, like there's times where stuff comes up and you're like, okay, so leadership failed to interject at this point, or you weren't properly trained or qualified, or you like, there's a lot of things that can come up during the discovery.
I would say in the majority of the DRBs I've been in, before the person even enters the room, they have that person's chief there and they're getting grilled. Before, like, what happened that this sailor did this, and why is this not your fault? Because I can tell you, it's probably your fault.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because of mismanagement, or and we'll talk about this after we uncover the facts. And then I've seen the DRB literally shift focus from the subject, and they dismiss them rapidly. And then now it's like, Chief, why don't you stand
now
there?
The chief's getting soul-slept.
Why don't you hop up front and center? And then the CMC just reaming this chief in front of the rest of the chiefs.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny because there was an LN1 who was like the legal, like signing and like they forgot to dismiss the LN1. So this first class got to see this chief just get dressed down. Yeah. And it was like, well, I think you just,
tell your friends.
I think maybe you could tell the rest of the crew, this is what happened.
Yeah. And that does happen. And it's like, it's a lot of, I feel like you get like in trying to explain it especially when it's coming from me, like I feel like you'd get way more mileage out of that LN1 telling everybody, but even though that's kind of inappropriate that she was in there, but I tell people a lot.
Don't assume it was a female. It was a man.
I thought you said it was a she. I thought you said it was a she. My bad. I'm a bad person. No. So I'm a bad person.
Oh, we'll review the tape, and then I did.
I swear to God, you said it was a she. Yeah, I'll have to rewind. But the LN1 telling everybody if it was a he, we don't know.
Who knows?
Runs around and tells everybody it's probably going to go a lot further than like when I have conversations with sailors and listeners of the podcast, when they're asking like, well, why don't chiefs ever get held accountable? It's like, they do get held accountable a lot of times. And I've told a lot of stories about me destroying chiefs in the chiefs mess. And it's not like, you're not going to know it's happening. Like not always. There's been a time, like there was once or twice where I was destroying a guy to the flavor of there's no way that anybody in the forward half of the submarine didn't hear me doing it. But
I just think that that perceived inequity from the crew.
Yeah.
That they're not seeing the fallout. They're not. Well, how about this? They're not seeing that eval that literally just destroyed this person's career for the next 5 years because
the LOI,
no senior chief board, no LOI or a letter of admonition. Like that selection board will never select this person. We've effectively ended their career because they're going to look at that eval and go, whoop, right up, like radioactive, like right off the top of the pile. Just whoop, okay.
But it's like, I also think too, though, that like I'm a big proponent of, because you say that like, oh, they're never going to get promoted again. And Seaman Timmy's like, yeah, well, I got demoted when I did it and it set me back 5 years. So how is that fair still? And so I'm a big proponent of like, look, maybe it's got to happen at the Commodore level or something, but I think that we should be able to get busted down. I think that
we can't. I mean, like, I have seen Chiefs
enough
lose their anchors.
Sure. Well, like usually they're frocked Chiefs that go to NJP or like or they do something so crazy that it's on the cover of the Navy Times and they're at court martial. But there's not a lot of in between where like a sailor, like a chief does something that an E5 would go to captain's mast for. But because they're a chief, I would expect even more out of them, right? Like he's a buddy of mine. He's a great dude. I would lay down in traffic for this guy, but he violated his integrity as a senior chief, like lied to the commanding officer about where they were at in a procedure and the lineup of the system kind of thing. And then immediately went and said, I don't know why I did that. Like, that's not true. We're actually here, because it was like, they were just getting kicked in the teeth. They had a bunch of procedural violations. And when asked the question, it like reminded him that he hadn't done that thing yet. And so he was basically going to tell a little white lie and then go fix it. But then he's the type of human that immediately, like after he did that, because he, in his mind and in the sleep deprived state he was in, decided, he's like, I can't take another kick in the face. He said that. And then he was like, that was a mistake. And he went and tried to rectify it the only way he could at that point. So he went to captain's mast. That happened. Everybody knew he went to captain's mast, but like an E5 probably would have been an E4. So like, and I want to say he was a frocked senior chief. So it's like, shouldn't he have been a chief after that? Because we have supposedly there's a higher bar when you're at that level of leadership that like, I shouldn't have to tell a chief that you can't violate your integrity and lie about anything. Like that's not what we do. It's built into our core values, not to mention all the things we train into chiefs along the way. So, I don't know. I'm a big proponent of like, look, if I do something that's mast worthy, like maybe it needs to go to the Commodore level so that everybody doesn't freak out. Cause whatever, I don't even know how I feel about NJP authority in the iteration it is now, resting at the CO level. But I digress, but I think that chiefs should be able to lose rank easier, like significant. I think it would help a lot if a guy, especially like, so that the chiefs that are like 7 seconds from retirement and put their roller skates on because nothing can happen. It doesn't matter how crappy my performance is. Like I'm still retiring as a chief or a senior chief or whatever. I've interacted with a lot of sailors via the podcast platform, like that are at commands where there's a lot of those types that are like, they just came there to retire. And so they don't have quality leadership, and those sailors aren't about to retire. Those sailors are 8-year first classes. And so it's like, they have to deal with this. And so now they're shouldering the burden of this chief that's like drinking coffee and going home at 10 a.m. because who cares? Like they don't care what their evals say because they're retiring at the same pay grade regardless. So I think the risk, if there was a risk, like if there was that anvil dangling over their head of, hey, you could lose that star before you retire for incredibly substandard performance or neglect or whatever, then maybe,
I think such an issue. The main theme of that entire part that you just put out was about accountability.
For sure.
Maintaining like the things like that chiefs wear t-shirts. Yeah. The things that chiefs make t-shirts for, like maintaining the standards, no excuses. And it's like, no excuses looks really cool on a t-shirt, like results, not excuses. And it's like some crappy pirate skull of a cheese hat. And I'm like, oh God, that's so stupid. Please do not make me wear this t-shirt. But in all reality, like, okay, excuses are actually just mitigating circumstances, and reality bites. So just tell me what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not an excuse; it's an explanation of the actual relevant factors that came to the conclusion of this situation. So it's not an excuse; just let me know. Now, if I see that you're intentionally trying to weasel out of it, then that's not being accountable to your own stuff. So that's an excuse. I think that's more what they're getting at. But we've lost a lot of those definitions because we're using these little token phrases or these little fortune cookie kind of looks really cool on a t-shirt stuff.
Right.
So,
but I think like for the junior sailor trust issue, you would gain a lot back by saying, and then acting upon once the mechanism's in place, like saying that, chiefs can lose rank. Like if a chief gets a DUI and they're a paid senior chief at 18 years, they're retiring as a chief.
That would hurt.
Yeah, I feel like that it should be something we should do better than.
I mean, it works in every other military. Why is the Navy special?
Yeah. I'm like, it should be better than an LOI or an LOR.
Because I've definitely seen master sergeants get bumped down to sergeant first class in the Army. Yeah. Totally seen it.
And I 100% think that should be a thing. I don't
take stripes.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anything else on the initiation front? I feel like we captured most of it, but it's also one of those things I feel like I could talk about forever.
And we do every year, but it's wholly unique only in that the Navy tries to promote all of their E7s at the exact same time across the entire service.
Yeah.
I feel like, maybe we should shift to not just once a year. That's another idea that I have.
That is interesting too, because I know that like instead of frocking, they wait till pay dates in other services, and then they do like individual.
Frocking is a wholly Navy tradition.
Thing. Yeah,
it's Coast Guard too, but Navy sea services.
I remember
my brother's in the Air Force. He's when he picked up E6, he was a tech sergeant select.
Mm-hmm.
So he was not addressed as tech sergeant. He was not paid as tech sergeant. He was staff sergeant until the day his line number came up, and then he walked out of there on Friday as staff sergeant and walked in on Monday as tech sergeant. And then now they assume the uniform and the title, and that's the day they get paid.
Yeah.
Only in the Navy will they let you walk around like you're big boy wearing your new stripes and your new uniform and your new title, but you're not getting paid for it. And if you screw up in this intervening period, we'll just knock you right back down.
To the pay grade before you got frocked. Not just the one that you're getting paid for, the one below that. Yeah, it's super weird because I hadn't really thought about it recently anyway, but I remember a lot of my friends in the Army were getting and their promotion ceremonies were just kind of like all over the place, and I ended up showing up to those, and it's just like, and it was only them, and they did their own. Like my friend got promoted to master sergeant in the Army, and it was just like it was just her, and that was it. And like obviously guests and stuff, but she was the only one getting promoted.
It's just like a classic Navy thing to only have 2 tests a year and then 1 test for chief, and that's it.
Yeah, and I wish too that like it like that could only be possible if we did leadership development and education really well year round, and like addressed all of the things at like milestones. I mean, however you wanted to do it, like where if we stick to the current model and they actually certify a bunch of facilitators and these courses actually get off, all the NLEC courses actually get off the ground.
Yeah, I think it was the 1-2 punch of they tried to roll out a program quickly and then coronavirus hit too. So it was like bang, bang.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we definitely fumbled the ball rolling it out first, and then the recovery efforts, which were ongoing, got shut off by Corona. So it's depressing.
I'm see. I'm applying to Senior Enlisted Academy, so I'm going to try to go next year as a chief. So I'm interested to see.
The friends I have going now are all doing it all electronically, so hopefully that's not the case, because you get a lot more out of it in residence, I think, doing the 3 weeks or whatever.
Yeah, from what I've seen, it's like recently updated. They're still doing 3 weeks in residence, so you do like 3 weeks on Blackboard and then 3 weeks in Newport. So I don't know if maybe they're only doing like half the class, like if you're local to the area. Like, not terribly far away from Newport, but
right. Yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, dude, I loved it. There was a lot of guys that were not open to learning anything while they were there. They were just checking a box because they had to make Master Chief or whatever. But I heard a lot of that crap while I was there. But I mean, it wasn't everybody, but I would say it was even a minority, maybe like 30%, 40%. Like there was a lot of people that were there and were very open-minded and wanted to learn. And I had a lot of fun, like, because the curriculum's great, but then, and it's all ever evolving. So I'm sure it's even better than when I was there, but then they do these lectures of opportunity after the normal day stuff. So like around 1700, 1800, they'll have these guys down in Leadership Hall where they do like the whole class lectures instead of your small groups. And there's a lot of really cool lectures too that you would enjoy all of them. Like that, it's cool. They bring these outside speakers in and,
well, I'd be interested to see like really more cool of a model of how they're training these chiefs and senior chiefs to accept more responsibility at a later stage. What would it be if we created like a lead petty officers course where it was like a SIN certified course, and it's not an NEC, like it's not a C school, but you would have that completion of like, okay, I'm ready to become a leading petty officer, and where we're actually teaching people how to write evals and how these different systems will allow people to manage their careers more effectively, and that you're getting that piece sooner. So when you put on your khakis, it's not like this, like, haha, I have all this hidden knowledge that I'm going to hold from you, so that when it's time to become a leader, now I get to dump it on you in these 6 weeks. And then your first year as a boot chief, you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, and that's like what I mean. It shouldn't come
as a shock, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it should all be programmed in along the way so that any initiation stuff that we do, it's just a finishing school and a team building activity. It's not.
Yeah, I would much rather be that little frog in a pot where the water's slowly boiling instead of like just being lopped right into this scalding cauldron and just like,
I feel like that's the move, and I hope we get there eventually. And I know that's kind of what they're trying to accomplish with all the NLIC stuff. It's just they got to get that stuff off the ground. But yeah, man, well, save rounds or alibis.
It's just super fun.
Yeah, man, always
talking.
It's been a minute, so it's always good. I'm having fun. Like, it feels like I'm kind of like catching up with everybody that I talk to because I was like down for so long. But
I try to hit you up every now and again just to.
No, I know you check on me more than anybody. I actually, so when I told you, we'll talk about that part offline. But yeah, you checked on me more than a lot of people. So like, I appreciate it, man. It's always good talking to you.
All right, yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's always fun to talk to Nick. I just love talking to chiefs and sailors and whatever, if that's not painfully obvious by the fact that I spend a lion's share of my free time working on this podcast. I love having those conversations. I'm really excited that we got to do it again. And you'll see a lot more stuff coming as well of this nature. I'm working on a project with a lot of really cool people that will appear in print, and that's all I'm going to tell you right now. Eventually, it's going to take a while, but that we're working on that. I'm working on other stuff just for the podcast specific. Like there's an ebook / audiobook coming before I die. It's in a very rough draft developmental phase of whatever right now. It's crawling. But it's something I'm working on. I want to get more stuff out there. I want to get more mediums to communicate things. And especially like the lessons I've learned just by talking to all the awesome people like Nick, on the podcast. So, I'm developing as a leader as a result of these conversations, and it's really cool for me. And I love that a lot of it is not, it's like junior sailors doing it, right? I mean, you could even like EODC, right? Like young chief in the Navy teaching me all kinds of awesome things. Having sailors on like Megan Wilcoxon from Scuttlebutt, like a junior sailor that separated from the Navy and is now doing this awesome project. And just, I'm learning a lot by just having these discussions, and a lot of it is coming from junior people. Junior to me anyway, like as far as like just time in the Navy and rank and experience and whatever, but they just such wildly varying experiences and perspectives and contexts that it's like you can't help but learn things from these awesome people. So it's really cool. if you could like, share, subscribe, review on all the platforms and the things and the social medias and whatever, it helps us get the word out. So the more you all are willing to use the platforms that you have to share and like and take the time to review and all that stuff, it helps with the algorithmic sharing and such. So I'm sure that made some kind of sense to somebody. And then as always, if you need anything from us, hit us up. Don't Give Up the Ship Podcast at gmail.com. You can Facebook message us, Don't Give Up the Ship Podcast, or you can DM us on Instagram or Reddit, or get on the sub, DGUTS Podcast, at DGUTS Podcast, U and R DGUTS Podcast, whatever, on Reddit, and you can DM us. You can get on the sub and have discussions. You'll see us active on our Navy and our military and our new to the Navy and all the ones that you would think. You'll see the episodes posted there. I need to get better about posting the Spin the Yarns there, but the episodes are always posted there, and I'm as active as my bandwidth will currently allow, and I'm trying to be more active in just other discussions besides the podcast stuff. But you'll see us on there. Hit us up, reach out, give us feedback, have the conversations, tell me I'm an idiot. It's all fair, and I will accept all of it. I've been destroyed via Reddit and other mechanisms for feedback, and then you can ask questions, ask for help, whatever. We're always here. So hit us up if you need anything. And that's it. That's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and don't give up the ship.